Hello again, friend. I'm Eric Miller. Do you know of someone who went to church, then just stopped? Maybe you know of a young man, or maybe it's even you that went to church for a long time, decided, you know what, just this doesn't fit with me. The culture I'm living in today just contradicts what I hear from a preacher or pastor or priest, and it just doesn't fit. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Where I've got these, it almost feels hypocritical. Well, I've had all those feelings. And growing up, I grew up in a very traditionalist type of Christian home where I was told to say this amount of prayers per day, and but yet I didn't feel like I was living it. I would go out and still have the same behaviors of people that were non-Christians, that were, that didn't really have that foundation or that, love for other people. So it just didn't fit with me for a very long time. It took me a long journey of self discovery and walking through some dark times to figure out that I'm a spiritual being and I can never feel anything of what I need to. It has to be with God. It can't be a substance, it can't be alcohol, it can't be any other type of addictive behaviors. So I want to share with you an article I wrote. I just posted on Substack. There's a link to it in the description of this video. Hope you'll check that out. I'm going to read this to you, and maybe there'll be some commentary along with it too. So I hope you get a lot out of this. And if you know of a young man or someone who's struggling, they've left the church and they feel very off. Maybe they're depressed a lot. Maybe they just feel directionless, and they're struggling with what to do next. So this could be a part of it. It could be a big part of it, quite frankly, as to why that person's struggling. So let me jump in. What I kept and what I threw out. A field guide for the de-churched. I left the church of my childhood tradition many years ago. The leaving wasn't dramatic. There was no blow up, no scandal, no Sunday I walked out and slammed the door behind me. It just happened slowly. I started missing weeks, then months, and eventually I noticed I was relieved every Sunday morning that I didn't have to go to church. One day I admitted to myself that I wasn't going back. Over the years that followed, I had drifted in and out of other denominations. I'd visit one for a season, find pieces of it that fed me, and pieces of it that didn't, and then I'd move on again. I wasn't shopping so much as searching and trying to figure out what was mine and what had only ever been borrowed. Was it really me? Was I only doing these things because I was taught it and it really wasn't my values and beliefs? And that was definitely me, and maybe it's you too. That long stretch of wandering wasn't the end of my spiritual life. It was just the beginning of it. And eventually, after all the wandering, I came back to the tradition I grew up in. Imagine that. But I came back as a different man, carrying a different bag. Some of what I'd been given as a boy, I had thrown out along the way. Some of it I kept and held on to more tightly than ever before. And some of it I'd picked up in other rooms entirely and brought it back with me. This is a short field guide for what I threw out and what I kept. Yours will look different than mine, and that's great because you're on your own journey. But you might recognize some of what I'm going to talk about. So, what did I throw out? The certainty. That can be a scary thing when you are given this sort of indoctrination, this tradition, this container, I'll say. It can be very safe to live in that container. But within that, there's not a lot of growth. And there can be rules that you feel like you got to follow, or bad things are going to happen to you as a result of not following the type of God's law that your tradition may say. So I'm not trying to put that down in a way in which that we don't need those things. We do. We need to have guidelines, but God finds us in places that are when we're in, quote, sin, or in disconnection of. God is there for us. So I threw out the version of faith that required me to be sure and to be perfect. The one that treated doubt like a moral failing and handed me a set of answers with instructions to defend them. I'm not sure of much, and I'm sure of less every year. I've come to believe, though, that this isn't the problem. The men I sit with who are actually growing spiritually aren't the ones with the most certainty. They're the ones who've made a peace with not knowing and have learned to keep walking anyway. Certainty is a posture you take toward an idea. Faith is a posture you take forward toward your life, a new life. They aren't the same thing, and I had them confused for a very long time. The performance. I threw out the part of church life where you had to seem like you were doing well even when you weren't, where struggle could only be confessed in carefully managed forms, never the real thing, and never the thing that would actually disqualify you from the community. The men I sit with now don't perform. They show up to a meeting afraid sometimes and uncertain about how they'll build a new life. These men are courageous and tell the truth. They show up to my Zoom room shaking and they tell the truth. They're able to do that. They don't have to dress it up, and that's more spiritually serious than anything I'd ever experienced inside of any sanctuary I'd been to. The God who needed me to be afraid of him. I wonder if you relate to this. The gods that, we're told we need to be close to God, but who wants to be close to a vindictive, angry, legalistic type of God that's very conditional on if you do these things, then God will love you. Have you ever felt that? Drop a comment in, would you? Let me know. I threw out the God who was watching to catch me, the one who kept score, the one whose love came with an asterisk by it. I no longer need to be terrified of the divine in order to get him to get my attention, or her. If your image of God has to scare you to function, that isn't God. That's leverage somebody used on you a long time ago, and nobody ever helped you to get out of that. You can put it down now. What I kept. Silence. I kept the silence, the kind that happens when you sit by yourself early before anybody needs anything from you. The kind that doesn't ask you to perform or believe or decide, but simply lets you be there long enough to hear what's actually going on inside you. The church I grew up in didn't teach me the silence in that way. I had to find it later in other rooms, but I've come to think it's the most ancient practice the human spirit has, and the one a man recovering from too much religion needs the most. To read the gospel or read the Bible and sit with it, not be told how to interpret it, but sit with it how it resonates with you. Examine. I kept this simple practice. Older than any denomination, of looking back over your day at the end of it and asking, where did I feel most alive today? And where did I feel the least alive today? I do this at night before bed. I do it again in the morning. I look for the gratitude. What is it that I have in my life that I'm so grateful for? Is the divine part of that? I ask that question. Or what am I ungrateful for in that day? So you can frame it in different words like that, but the intention is what makes you feel most energized, alive, and what makes you feel least alive and down, maybe even depressed. Those are the things to look at. That's the whole practice. You can do it in 5 minutes in bed before you sleep. And most useful thing the contemplative tradition ever gave me. And it doesn't require belief. It just requires you to be honest with yourself. The conviction that something is paying attention. I kept the deepest thing, the one I can't shake, even when I want to, which is the conviction that we are alone in the universe in the way some religions want for us to believe. Something larger is paying attention. My life is being held even when I can't feel it being held. I can't prove this. I don't need to. The conviction has survived more than any other belief I started with, and it was survived for a reason. Has survived for a reason. You can call it whatever you want, the holy, the divine, the ground of being, God. If the word still works for you, use that one. Whatever it is, it's what kept me alive when I shouldn't have been alive at all. And it's what's asking quietly for your attention now. The other people walking the same road. I walk in the brotherhood, the ones who've walked through their own collapses and come out the other side without being bitter or even fake. One of my spiritual friends has said to me, said actually in a bigger context than that, but in a group, that a life well lived, you can tell someone who's is happy even in 40s and their 50s and on, beyond that, that if they're able to smile and to don't take themselves too seriously, they've led a really good life and they have a good spiritual center that helps keep them grounded. All right, you need at least one of these in your the one who's walked, the one who can sit with another man's pain without trying to fix it. The one who tells the truth. You need at least one of these in your life, someone you can talk to. If you don't have one, finding one is important than figuring out what you believe. The believing happens in the company of those men. It doesn't happen alone. So let me kind of sum that up a little bit because it didn't quite come out the way it's written here. I'm talking about not walking this road alone. You can do it in a group format of like-minded men who are on the same path, or you can do it one-on-one. And both of those things I found to be very, very valuable. All right, one last thing. I just walked you through the slow, careful sorting of what to keep and what to throw out is the work I do with men every week in something called spiritual direction. It isn't therapy, it isn't religious instruction or 11th step meeting if you're in the program, if you're in a 12-step program. It's two men sitting together paying close attention to the life one of them is actually living. Attention to the life one of them is actually living and asking what is real, what is from God, what is from a wound that needs naming, and what is asking us to let go. I encourage you to seek that out. Ask for help from whatever higher power you have guidance in your discernment process. Next week, I'll talk about the 10-minute practice I came back to after everything fell apart. All right, some quick thoughts for you. I went through a period of darkness where I was growing spiritually, but I came to a point where, because I was feeling like, all right, this church, this thing I was doing before isn't working for me. So I tried other things in ways of escapism, ways of feeling whole, and it just didn't work. Years of that, I just was trying to fill that God-sized hole, maybe you've heard that before, with things and substances and escape mechanisms that weren't working. So that time period I just mentioned of walking alone in darkness, it was scary. And it's led me to do the work I do today. So I talked about spiritual direction. I do that work. So I'm not trying to sell you anything. If there's a lot of resources online, give it a Google, spiritual direction, and you'll find other resources besides me. So if it's not a fit for me, I understand. It's a God thing. It's a spirit thing. But seek that out in fellowship where a group of men come together and there's so much loneliness out there that we need each other. The pandemic started this where we felt isolated, and then since then, it's going on 6 years now, right? 5, 6 years, and it's really changed our world where there's so much loneliness, and we need that face-to-face companionship. We do this on screen. It's very effective in a lot of ways, but we do need to be in the same room physically with another person. So I hope you got some value out of this. Anyway, I think that's it for today. I will talk to you soon.